2.5 seconds.
If you do not understand white supremacy, what it is, and how it works, everything else that you do understand will confuse you. In all of these 9 areas of activity: economics, education, entertainment, labor, law, politics, religion, sex, and war. Anywhere on the planet, minute by minute, day by day, all of the time, all of the time, all of the time.
All righty, good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Welcome to the Counter Racist Code Show with Mr. Neely Fuller Jr., and I am your co-host, Mr. Bobby. It's also called the CRCS, same thing, Counter Racist Code Show, where we have Mr. Neely Fuller discuss codification and his publication, his book, The United Independent Compensatory Code System Concept. He will be talking more about that book about the 45-minute mark. To get in contact with the show, call 516-453-9921 and be sure to hit the number 1 button after you do that, and that way you will go to the top of the line, and if Mr. Fuller is answering a question, you will be the next in line. You can do that. Or you can simply Gmail me, as a number of you have. The address is the numeral 7, Mr. Bobby, BOBBY, @gmail.com. And I will effort to read your Gmail. If I do not read it on this particular show, at some point it will be read, and I will give you the date and time that your Gmail will be read. Okay, let me introduce to some and present to others Mr. Neely Fuller Jr. Mr. Fuller, good morning, and how are you?
Good morning. I'm still learning.
Mr. Fuller, a lot of people have asked me, what are you doing during this coronavirus? And I told them, I don't know. Why don't you call in? But I'm going to ask you for them that are intimidated to call in or whatever. But what are you doing in this particular situation concerning the coronavirus?
Well, I'm adhering to what the code tells me to do. Code meaning try to do the best possible thing that you can do under circumstances where you really don't know what's going on. That's any circumstance where you hear conflicting reports. You hear different information. So you try to use the best information that you can get, and you act accordingly. That's the codified way. Try to get the best information that you can possibly get, and then look at that information, evaluate it, and then act accordingly. So considering my age and general physical condition, and from what I am hearing, the information that's coming to me, I'm trying to stay in as much as I possibly can. And when I go out, I adhere to what they say I should adhere to, wear a mask or some type of covering of the face, and try to get back in as soon as I possibly can, but only come out to be around people when it's absolutely necessary. And that is what I have been doing.
Okay.
Because that's the best information that I have gotten. And so far, and in some places they've said, well, it's all right just to walk around, no mask, no nothing, go to the beach or whatever. I would not do any of that at this particular time. But that just pertains to me. That's the United Independent way. Other people may make a different evaluation depending on their circumstances. But from what I'm hearing, I'm just staying as close in as possible and possibly be, if I can, I guess, be one of the last people to venture out when everybody else is already out.
Mhm.
And that's the kind of plan that I have at this time. Now that could change.
Okay.
But, mhm.
All righty. Let's go to the Gmail here from, I guess this was from last week. Nanziel wrote this. He says, Mr. Fuller, you've left me slightly confused in that it would seem you have contradicted yourself. Last week, you stated that you do not believe in and only has a vague definition of forgiveness. Then weeks prior to that, you stated that, I can paraphrase, he would save a fully fledged white supremacist during a flood, even knowing that this individual would kill him the next day, kill Mr. Fuller the next day. Would he categorize this behavior as forgiveness, insanity, or something else? Confuse Naziel.
Oh, well, I didn't, I did probably confuse somebody if I said it like that. I don't remember exactly how I said it. Sometimes I don't say things like, I guess a lot of people don't say things the way that they ought to be said. And just what you might call a breezy conversational type situation, which is what codification is not supposed to be. It's supposed to be very exact. But I'm saying it depends on the condition and how much knowledge I have of what the person might do. The person might try to kill me the minute I try to save them. The minute if the person is drowning and I drag them ashore, then they whip out a knife. Now, if I know the person is going to do that, then most likely I will act accordingly. I might even save the person because the person may be what you call insane, okay, and has that kind of reputation. So I might try to save the person, but then I would be guarded once I got that person ashore. See, it depends on the individual circumstances, like everything in counter-racist codification. It's not set in stone except just as a guideline. These are general suggestions, but there are individual circumstances where it depends on the person's level of knowledge of what's going on, and it always comes down to what is the best thing to do in this circumstance that will fulfill the requirements of having to do the most constructive thing. Is always between non-constructive and constructive. So I just gave just a general example, basic example. Yes, if I saw white people, in a flood or in a hurricane, or they're rushing away from a forest fire, and I have the means of transportation to get them out of it, and they don't, and I see them just running all over the place and trying to get away, and I know how to get away, and I have the vehicles available to get away, I would just say, well, it might be 30 or 40 of them. I don't know who they are and all like that. Depends on how much knowledge I have of what's going on. Mm-hmm. But I see that they're white people. I'm just giving this as an example. So I said, it might be 40 of them, and so I got the capacity to get as many as 100 out, and it's only 40. Come aboard. Jump in the vehicle, whatever it is, the convoy or whatever it is. Just pile on. Bring everybody. Get out of here. Get away from fire. I don't want to see anybody burn to death and stand back and laugh. No, we don't want that kind of world. We got that kind of world right now. That's the mentality of the white supremacists. Mm-hmm. In many cases, they make joy out of people's misery, mm-hmm. And so no, we don't want that kind of world. We don't want to send that kind of message. We shouldn't. We don't want to tiptoe into anything like that. And that's the general idea.
Okay.
Now, that's an answer to that question. Now,
already.
I might have lost the first question.
No, that was it. He wanted some
okay.
clarification.
All right.
The person wanted some clarification, and I think that you clarified it as best as
right.
you
Each
possibly
person
could.
should make their own decision, but try to make the decision in favor of justice.
Okay. Alrighty. 516-453-9921 if you would like to get in contact with the show. And again, hit that number 1 button and you'll go right to the top. Or if you'd like for me to read your question, you can. Just write me, the numeral 7, Mr. Bobby, BOBBY, @gmail.com, and I will do my best to get it on. Get it on the air or be read. Let's go to Melissa G. From the Gmail says this: Mr. Fuller, can a non-white person constructively think, speak, and act while in a tragic arrangement? In other words, can one, quote, talk black and sleep white, end of quote?
That's possible, yes. I mean, if you're a prisoner of war, and all prisoners of war are equal, so everything that you do is in support of the system, but you try to minimize that support as much as you possibly can. As a soldier who has been in captivity, black people have been in captivity. We've never been allowed outside of captivity. There's never been a time when that's been true since the beginning of the system of white supremacy, whenever that was. And we were made slaves and prisoners of war, which is the same thing. A prisoner of war is a slave. A slave is a prisoner of war. They're both the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
And if it was a criminal act, the way that they became criminalized, and black people were criminalized by being black, that's a crime in the system of white supremacy that calls for imprisonment, enslavement, that calls for all types of brutality. That's a requirement of the system of white supremacy. That's what it's for. It's for mistreatment, domination, and mistreatment of people with color in their skin, which in the system of white supremacy is a crime. So people who are victims of this crime of white supremacy have already been in captivity. The black people on this planet right now were captured before they were born. So they were born in captivity. They were born as slaves, all of them. Myself, everybody. If you're black and you're on this planet called Earth, you are a captive of the system of white supremacy.
Mm-hmm.
By all the evidence and by definition. So therefore, you're always supporting that system. If you're in a prison, you're supporting the system, the prison system, by being a prisoner. It's not your fault. But what you try to do is minimize it as much as you possibly can. But black people shouldn't try to judge, well, who's the bigger prisoner than the other. And that is a huge mistake that we have carried on as a tradition almost. We just spent all of our prison time, most of it, trying to say who's the biggest prisoner, who is the most cooperative prisoner, who's cooperating with the system more than everybody else on any given Thursday. When you're all cooperating because you're all in there, you're behind the walls. End of story. So, little incidents about whether or not somebody was trying to do one of the guards a favor or something like that, or was taken advantage of on a given day or a given moment, that goes with the prison system. The whole idea is what can you do to destroy the prison system and replace it with a system of justice. That's the whole idea.
Mm-hmm. Yes, sir. Okay. Alrighty. Again, 516-453-9921 if you'd like to speak with Mr. Neely Fuller, Jr. here on the Counter-Racist Code Show with Mr. Neely Fuller Jr., and I am your co-host, Mr. Bobby. Going to the Gmails, and boy, do we have a lot of Gmails. This is good. Okay. This comes from Rachel, and I guess you could entitle it, What Should I Focus On? Says, Hi, Mr. Fuller. I was thinking about the information you are providing to us weekly. I want to learn more information, so I have been reading more. There's so much information available, but it's hard to know where to start. I'm currently trying to focus on how white supremacy worked in the past and how it's working currently. Do you have any constructive books that would be a beneficial read? What would you recommend to focus on? Should I focus on ways to plant foods? Should I be reading about ways to care best for my offspring? Or just focus on the problems that come up daily and make sure I know as much as possible to solve these problems? Note, I have your book and read Dr. Welsing's book. I may decide to reread both.
Hello? Hello?
Okay, yeah, there we go, Mr. Fuller. Did you hear the question?
No, because I was cut off.
Okay, yeah, I was too. Okay, all right. Let me read the question here again. I've been having some technical problems this morning. Okay, anyway, it says, Mr. This comes from Rachel. She says, Mr. Fuller, I was thinking about the information you are providing to us weekly. I want to learn more information, so I have been reading more. There's so much information available, but it's hard to know where to start. I'm currently trying to focus on how white supremacy worked in the past and how it's working currently. Do you have any constructive books that would be a beneficial read? What would you recommend to focus on? Should I focus on ways to plant foods? Should I be reading about ways to care best for my offsprings, or just focus on the problems that have come up daily and make sure I know as much as possible to solve these problems? By the way, I have your book and read Dr. Welsing's book. I may decide to reread both books because I read them, both books, during a time I was most confused.
Well, in answer to the question, all of the above, everything that she said. But if she's talking about focus, that's what I wrote my book for. Focus on what's in the book. Now, just turn to any page and think about what you're reading while you're doing it. And then act accordingly. I have a lot of suggestions in the book. Just follow some of these suggestions and see if they work. And if they don't work, ask me questions about them, since I'm available now, and like here on the air. So you want something cleared up. But in answer to the question, she says she reads lots of books. But what book should she read? She should read the book that I'm talking about, the Compensatory Counter-Racist Code by Neely Fuller Jr. That's what I wrote it for, to answer those questions that she's asking. So I'm missing something here. That, she said, what do you do every day? Well, broadly speaking, and specifically speaking, you do the most constructive thing. That's what the book says basically throughout. Everything is divided into two categories. Every move you make, every time you say something to somebody, it's going to do what? Have a constructive effect or a non-constructive effect. There's no such thing as in between anywhere in the universe. That applies to everybody, everywhere on the planet, all the time. There's no exceptions to that. It's no wiggle room. You're either doing something and saying something that's constructive, or you're not. If you just want the categories, I mean, you know, and where you can really wrap your mind around it and stay focused with clarity. It's not all that, you know, it's not complicated. You just don't keep reading books and reading books and reading books and putting them down and then go and do the same old things you've been doing all the time. I mean, there's no point in reading any book if you're going to do the same things you're already doing. I mean, because if you have problems and you read a book that's designed to help you solve the problem, but when you read the book, you don't follow what the instructions are for solving the problem doesn't get solved. It's just that simple. Then, you know, if you're trying to operate a can opener and you don't know how, you never had a can opener before, read the instructions for operating a can opener.
Yeah.
If you have a record player or something like that you never saw before, you know, it's an instruction book. It tells you how to operate the record player.
Yes, the instruction
And when
manual.
you follow the instructions, what you have is a record player that's playing records. That's the way it works.
Yes. Would you call that an
put the
instruction manual?
book down and just go back to tinkering, well, yeah, that makes everything difficult.
Yes. Most things come with a instruction manual that directs you to what you need to know about in operating whatever it is to operate.
Yes.
Okay.
What do you do in every circumstance? That's what codification is about. Everything that works in the universe works according to a code. If it works according to the way that it's supposed to work, that's everything. And if you do that, it'll work every time. You drive a car, you drive it the same way every time. Speed limit is 20 miles an hour, you go 20 miles an hour. And that reduces the chances of you having an accident.
Yes, sir.
Slow down, curve ahead. That's an instruction book right there on the side of the road. It's just that simple. You slow down, reduce speed to 30 miles an hour. Don't take that curve at 50. Otherwise, you're going off the cliff.
Okay. All righty. Let's do this here. Let's go to Joshua. Okay, Joshua. Go ahead with your question for Mr. Fuller.
Oh, good morning, Mr. Fuller. I always say you're saving the world with your efforts, with your writings and your authorship. I've read your book and I listen to every show that I can. And the question is, do you believe that this can be white supremacy or racism can be looked at in more of a biological way? I mean, I watch a lot of Animal Planet and Discovery Channel, and I watch the lions, and the mammals have learned to fear them, and as time goes on, the brain and the thing itself starts to evolve with its situation. And so, do you believe that this is way more animalistic, or that there's an animalistic level to your writings, or I just think about the many times I've looked at people and I've tried to explain things to them in the face of the system, when it comes to you missing a bill or getting pulled over or anything, and it just seems like it doesn't matter. This is what it is, you're black, you're in this system. I mean, that's not what's said, but so yeah, the question, do you believe that this is just a pass down, that it's cellular at some level, or that the brain has evolved or devolved to that's kind of to deal with what is this more animalistic than we care to admit? Does that any of that make sense?
Well, I don't quite understand the question. Is it animalistic?
Yeah, so just like lions in the Serengeti hunt animals, and every animal fears them, because of just time itself. The animals have evolved to know when to run, and they've got all kind of systems to alert each other when the lion is there. Like, the monkey might chirp, and screech in the tree, and then the animals know the lion is there, and just different, evolutionary occurrences that come about because of this predator, and so just as your book is very logical and analytical, do you think it would help to look at it in more of because I just see so many things that happen that are outside of any kind of humanness or kindness. It just is, and it reminds me of Animal Planet. I mean, so is this like Animal Planet? I mean, you don't read that anywhere, but I watch so much Discovery Channel, and lions and mammals and lions and predator and prey. It just seems that it's that way. So if that makes sense at all, do you agree with that? Do you think that this is, that the brain has evolved or again devolved in some way so that it doesn't really matter what, you have to deal with this? And that's why I appreciate your book so much. It's like a codification, like you said. It gives me a way to deal with the animal. But do you think that any of that, does any of that make sense? I don't want to be garrulous or stretch it about, but is this Animal Planet, Mr. Fuller? It's what it feels like.
Oh, do I believe that people are not any different from animals? That's the question. Meaning, and by animals we mean like tigers and alligators, that people are just geared, it's in their nature to do the things that we see people do, and that this will just go on and on and on and on. No, I don't believe that. I believe people can evolve, and they can evolve in the directions they set their minds to go in. They have a mind that can change. People show that they have a change of mind every day, all day. You change your mind. You change your mind about what bus you want to catch. So it's just a matter of changing your mind. Everything is motivated by the mind. If you can change your values, something that you thought was important 10 years ago, you see people do that all the time. They'll say, oh, yeah, I used to do that, but I don't do that no more. I lost interest in doing it. And, I look back and wonder why I was doing it, because it didn't make sense. It wasn't working for me. But I didn't have that frame of mind at the time. So people can change, all right? Therefore, if it wasn't that way, there'd be no point in people even attempting to have a police force or anything, or have judges or courts. I mean, everybody just get out here and road warrior. It's free for all. I mean, and that's whatever comes to mind at the moment, because everything go by your instincts. Do anything and everything because you're an automatic anyhow. You can't change. But there's plenty of evidence that people change. You can always get help, but only the way you're going.
Okay. Alrighty. Was that it, Joshua? Because we have to take a little break here anyway. Don't be a stranger either, by the way.
You certainly answered that question. Yes, thank you.
Okay, all right, thank you very much. Alrighty, you are listening to the Counter-Racist Code Show with Mr. Neely Fuller Jr., and I am the co-host, Mr. Bobby. To get in contact with the show, you can call 516-453-9921, and be sure to hit press the number 1 button, and you will go to the very top of the line, and you will be next in line because generally Mr. Fuller is answering a question, but you'll be right after that. If you don't want to do it that way, you can also Gmail me, the numeral 7, Mr. Bobby, BOBBY, at gmail.com, and I will effort to read your Gmail. For the most part, it may not be read on today's show, but it will be read on a show coming up, and I will give you the date and the time that your Gmail will be read. So those are the ways to get in contact with the show, the Counter Racist Code Show with Mr. Neely Fuller Jr., and I am your co-host, Mr. Bobby. Okay, here, let's get back here to the Gmails. This comes from TZ Wiki. That's the best I can do with that. Gmail says this, Mr. Fuller, I hope you're well. You said to help everyone who needs the most constructive help. If a natural disaster strikes and a known white supremacist is in trouble, should he get help from his victims? How to tell if the natural disaster is not used by the Creator to wipe that very white supremacist out? How will we know?
You don't know. But if you're a black person in the system of white supremacy, or if you're any person anywhere on the planet here in the year 2020, you should always think of trying to do the most constructive thing. And you try to go in that direction. And when there is a disaster that seems to be out of the control of anybody, you try to help the person that needs help the most, because you keep in mind the whole purpose is to go from a world of non-justice, which is what we have, to a world of justice. And try to be and do the things that will head in that direction. Everybody should be on that page. Mm-hmm. And there will be people who will say, well, I'm not interested in justice. I mean, in fact, I'm interested in doing what I can to get over on people, to trick people, and to make a whole lot of personal gain off of somebody else's misery. Now, the white supremacists have that kind of mindset, okay? Otherwise, we wouldn't have such a thing as white supremacy. Wouldn't have anything, something like that. It would have never been invented if that wasn't a mindset. And so you just assume, yes, that a white person may be a racist, and that white person is in trouble. So if you can help that person, even though that person is classified as a suspected prison master, and you see that they're in dire circumstances, hanging off the edge of the building, and you happen to be walking by, and the person's fingers are beginning to slip, and you have some type of rope or something, or cable or something, it's attached to something, where you can help throw it to the person, and the person can save themselves, or you can help them to save themselves, well, you do that. You do that. You just don't stand there and watch the person's finger slip away and drop. You give it the benefit of a doubt. You pull the person up. Now, if the person does it the second time, see, it's all conditional. These are decisions you have to make on an individual level. That's how it's done. That's why it's called the United Independent Code. Different circumstances have nuances. The person may be a person who just does things every now and then that they shouldn't do, but everybody does, okay? And it might be a person who does things all the time. And you might just give it a benefit of a doubt. Someone called earlier on this same show asking the same basic question. No, during this coronavirus, for example, right now, broadly speaking, you help everybody that you possibly can help. I mean, don't get yourself mixed up about that, because it seems to be what? Seems to be something that's taking a toll on everybody. So it's just like if an asteroid or some type of comet or whatever they want to call it is heading toward the Earth, and they say it's going to explode here on the planet in the next 12 days, and that it would behoove everybody to try to go to a certain section of the Earth. All the planes and trains, I mean, everybody who can get to this certain section of the Earth where they will be subject to the least damage. Try to get everybody to this particular section, because in section number 1 or number 2 or whatever they say, wherever that's going to hit, they say that this particular place, this particular area, that's where most of the damage is going to be done. They predict that. Somebody figured that out, some scientist. I'm just giving this as an example. So you try to help everybody get on the train. White, non-white, everybody. I mean, that will take you to that particular spot where they say the less damage is likely to occur, that the people who are there will be safe. They will not come under certain death. Okay? And you have 12 days to get there. Let's say if that announcement was made today, everybody's rushing around, leaving everything behind. You just got 12 days. I mean, no point trying to take, your this and that and whatnot, trying to figure out which pair of some of your clothes that you usually would wear and whatnot. You wear whatever you think would be appropriate for where you're going, what the weather's going to be like and all like that. Forget about fashions and all that. That's out the window. Forget about getting your nails done and all that. Leave all that junk behind. I mean, because you got 12 days to get out of here. Otherwise, you are going to be dead. So people are doing what? Everybody's rushing around. White people, non-white people, all over the world trying to get to the area that is going to be safe, that's not going to be hit by that outer space vehicle that's going to destroy whatever it hits. It's going to hit in one place. And so everybody's going to the places where they will not be within danger. And the code says you help everybody. I'm speaking generally now. Now, you might spot somebody in the crowd that you think shouldn't be going. They should be left behind. But you don't even think about that either. If you don't walk up to them and put a pistol to their head and shoot them and say, you're not going. All right, I'm going to take advantage of this situation and eliminate you so that you are not saved. No, that's not the time to do that, according to the code. Why? Give it the benefit of a doubt, because whatever force put that comet on a course to hit in here may be just testing you to see what kind of person you are.
Okay.
What kind of person you are under the best conditions and the worst conditions.
Right, two questions. Number one, in the movie Shawshank Redemption, based on what you just said, the character Andy Dufresne, I forgot who played his part, Tim somebody, I think it was.
Tim Robbins.
Tim Robbins. And would you say that in that movie, he was in prison? We all know he was a victim, but he helped the people, the prison guards and the warden, with their taxes and so forth. Would that be a type of what you're talking about? Helping out in that situation, even though he was being abused and mistreated, and even though he was a victim, but he still did the most constructive thing.
Yes, and why did he do that? Because of the law of reciprocity, the law of compensation. You remember the guard that came down? I mean, all wide-eyed and acting like a kid, came into the library and said, my name is Dinkins, and I'd like for you to set up something for my children's educations. And so Andy the Frame said, okay, now here's a guard. But he came to a person that had knowledge of doing something. That's why getting knowledge is very important. That's one of the lessons of the movie Shawshank Redemption. You learn how to do something that people want and need, and people who are even hostile toward you will gravitate toward you simply because, like Mr. Dinkins did, the guard in that movie, Shawshank Redemption.
Yes.
The guard of a prisoner even shook his hand after he set it up for his children's education, for his children to get into a school. Why? He was going to benefit from it, even though he's dealing with a prisoner. But he was talking to the prisoner like the prisoner was an executive. Why? Because the prisoner became an executive in that particular situation by having what? Knowledge and understanding of how to do something that was constructive for that guard. And the guard couldn't help but recognize that.
Even though he was being mistreated and was a victim, he still performed. Yes,
not only that, that guard went and got all the other guards to come down there because Andy the Frame wound up doing all the guards' taxes every year, including guards that came from another penitentiary. The word got around. Said, that guy knows how to do your taxes. He can save you a lot of money. You say, he's a prisoner? Say, he's over there at Shawshank. And say, well, when we go over there to play baseball, I'm going to get him to do my taxes. What's his name? Andy the Frame. See what I mean?
Okay. All right.
See, and that goes back to answer to another question, a couple of questions people asked on this program about whether people can change. Yes, that's what you're trying to do. You're trying to change people from what they are to what they should be.
Okay.
And who are these people that need changing? Everybody.
Everybody.
Including black people all over this planet. We all need to be the quality people that we should have been in the first place. But the biggest stumbling block to that among the people of the planet Earth is this system called the system of racism, which never should have been invented in the first place because it's corrupted everyone, white and non-white.
Okay.
We're just as white people and black people all over this planet. We are nowhere near the quality of people that we should be. And the main stumbling block is this system of racism that we all are part of.
Okay. Now, the second question is this right here before we get to you to speak about your book. Somebody sent me a video of a YouTube video of you and Dr. Randy Short. I forgot the name of it, but what stood out to me was you were speaking about hot air. Do you remember that conversation that you had with Dr. Short, speaking about hot air?
I don't remember the conversation.
Yeah.
I don't remember about the hot air, and I don't remember Dr. Short.
Okay, the person sent it to me, and both of you were on there speaking about that. I gathered that the hot air was useless conversation, just having meetings but not producing anything and all that kind of stuff. But it was on YouTube, and I looked. Matter of fact, it was about an hour. I drove around listening to it, some interesting points, and you seem to be a little aggravated during that, but you don't remember, so you can't speak on that. But you can speak on this. This is the time where we have set aside for you to speak about this wonderful book, The United Independent Compensatory Code System Concept. So take it away.
Well, you can get the book. I'm talking to the audience now by going to producejustice.com. Producejustice.com. And what will come up on the screen is the method for ordering the book, the basic book, 2016 edition. They also have the 1984, but everything in the 1984 edition is, for the most part, covered in the 2016 edition. But some people want the 1984 edition too, or they just want that and want the 1984 edition and not the 2016 edition, even though the 2016 edition has more information in it. But for some reason, the people like the original. They say they like the original. They get more out of the original. Not supposed to work that way, but if they say it works that way, well, it works that way. But go to producejustice.com. And then there's also, in addition to the 2016 edition, it came out in 2010, called the Word Guide, and shows you how to use words when you're talking to someone, what to say, what not to say. If an issue about the flag pledge comes up, how do you handle that? What words do you use? You don't refuse to take a pledge to the flag. As a suggestion, you take a pledge to the flag, but you use the words that are according to the code that will do what? That will be a real pledge to a flag that will tell the truth and shouldn't offend anybody.
Yes.
And that's in there.
Yes.
Someone asked me about that a couple of days ago, and I told them.
They asked me about it yesterday.
You said
yes.
what now?
Somebody asked me about that Universal Pledge yesterday.
Oh,
the flag.
Okay. Yeah, well, someone asked me about it, and I gave it to them because it's in the textbook.
It is, yes.
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 The Universal Flag Pledge. It'll fit anywhere to any flag, and you can take that pledge. Like if you're on that football field, and they say, hey, you're going to take the pledge to the flag, or it's going to be trouble. I mean, we're going to get you in court or something like that, or you might get fired and all like that. And so codification is about doing the very best thing that you can do. That's what the entire book is about. In any circumstance, what to say, what to not say, what to do, what to not do, because everything is about saying and doing. What you say and what you don't say, and what you do and what you don't do, that will work best in every circumstance.
Yes.
And everybody should be interested in, doing the very best thing that anybody could ever do. I'm not saying that what I have written is it, but it's the best that I can do as a suggestion. Hopefully everything will be better. But go to producejustice.com, and you can get the instruction book for victims of white supremacy.
Okay. Now, Mr. Fuller, for those who don't know what you're talking about, the Universal Pledge, and you have repeated it on this show a couple of times, and on previous shows that I have been on with you, you have repeated that. But for those who do not know, this is Mr. Neely Fuller and the pledge that you can say to any flag. Mr. Fuller?
Yes, sir. Oh, you want me to say the pledge?
Yeah. People want to hear that.
Here it is. Here is the pledge, the Universal Flag Pledge. You'll make this pledge to any flag, anywhere you happen to be on the planet at any time, and it should fit. Nobody should be able to argue against it. It goes like this: I do at all times relate to the flag the exact same way that the flag relates to me. And and whatever procedure they have about your body language when you do it, all like that, just follow that procedure. If you're supposed to be standing erect, then you stand erect and take that pledge. Or if you're supposed to be sitting down, you sit down and take the pledge. If you're supposed to face the flag, in other words, look toward the flag, or look up to the flag, or down at the flag might be on the ground and not on a pole. I mean, you just ask them, what are the instructions for taking the pledge? But you always use those words. You might even ask for permission. Well, do I have freedom of speech where I can take the pledge to the flag the way that I want to take the pledge, not something somebody else wrote? Because this is you, all right? you taking the pledge. So you should be able to take the pledge in the way that you want to take the pledge. So if they say yes, because you're pledging allegiance to my flag, okay, well, you say you'll take that pledge, but you want to use words that are appropriate for you and the flag, since it's all between you and the flag. That's the concept of flag pledges. It's between you and the flag.
Exactly.
It's a deal. Yes, a contract that you are making between yourself and the flag. So I'm going to repeat it again.
Thank you.
I do at all times relate to this flag or the flag the exact same way that the flag relates to me. And it doesn't get any better than that. And if anybody comes up with a flag pledge anywhere on the planet that's better than that one, because that's a true pledge. You're telling the truth when you do that.
Yes.
Everybody's telling the truth when you do that. That's the automatic truth, regardless of what your intentions are. You're relating to that flag at that moment the exact same way that the flag is relating to you.
Okay.
And nobody can refute that. No court can come in and say, well, that's not what you're doing. All right? Yeah, it is what I'm doing. I mean, can't make a contract better than that. You relate to the flag the exact same way the flag relates to you.
The exact same.
You and the flag are in total harmony.
Yes.
I mean, there's no argument between you and the flag at all. Now,
yes,
somebody else may intervene. Now, that's where the trouble starts. All right? We're talking about the whole concept of a flag. All right? So what is a person likely to say? Hey, are you playing games with me? Now, here's where the first error is made. The person says, you are playing games with me, because the person can't say you're playing games with the flag, because the contract is being made between you and the flag.
Right.
Now, how did this other person get involved? So that's another dimension altogether. You didn't take a pledge to that person.
You did not.
Or did you? See what I mean? Depends on whether the person wants to get involved. But once that a person gets involved with your contract with the flag, that's a whole nother court altogether. Any person, I don't care who it is, the king or the president, what do you mean taking that pledge? That's not the correct pledge. Well, wait a minute, sir. It's not. Now you go into the question mode. Okay? Because he said, well, these are the words you're supposed to use. But then you can use those words, but you say, you told me to take a pledge. And it's supposed to be a voluntary pledge.
Yes.
Now you're telling me what my contract should be with the pledge. So the contract is not between me and the flag. It's between me and you. And who are you? And if the contract is between me and you, what do we need with the flag? How'd that get it? See what I mean? See, no argument can be made.
Yes,
that's the best pledge that can ever be made. That's pure. And it's the truth. Okay? A lot of pledges are not the truth. Like the one that I recited, that wasn't the truth. In school, when they first gave me a pledge of allegiance, that flag pledge does not tell the truth. So you're lying right out the gate. You're lying to the flag, lying on the flag. That flag does not represent what you said that it represents. Because they say got something in there about justice. Justice doesn't exist. So how can a flag represent something that doesn't exist?
Yes. How can a flag produce justice?
Yes, a flag can't produce justice. I've never seen it. It ain't happened.
No, and
so
you won't.
Justice does not exist in the system of white supremacy.
No.
And when I took that pledge for the first time in elementary school, when I learned it, I was in what they call a segregated school. Now, is that justice? I mean, by law. But I'm taking a pledge to a flag that they said it represents justice, and justice did not exist.
And you're in a segregated school.
Yeah, so I'm going back. I do at all times relate to the flag the exact same way that the flag relates to me. Now, if someone says, oh, you're just playing games, So I'm going to ask you a question. How does the flag relate to you? Smart aleck. And then the codified response is, I don't know. But you can ask the flag. And then you walk off. That's the end of that discussion.
Because that's what you're making a pledge to, the flag, not the person.
Yes. Unless the person tells you that you're making a pledge to them, well, now that's a whole different ball game, because they are not the flag. All right? That's two different things altogether. Completely separate.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. Anyway, there it is. You heard the universal
That's the
pledge.
Logic.
Yep. You've heard it, and now take heed to it. We have about 4 minutes in this segment, but I got to ask you this: and this is probably going to carry over into the next hour, but it's from Mr. Black, and he has it broken down into 4 sections here. So it says to Mr. Fuller, to what does Mr. Fuller attribute his overall good health, mental sharpness, and well-being? Does he drink or smoke?
Well, I'll answer the first question last. No.
No. Okay.
I don't know what whiskey or wine tastes like. I saw enough falling down drunks when I was less than 10 years old, and I was around them, and I saw all kinds of Saturday night fights and all like that, and knives being pulled, and people just staggering around, talking about they're having a good time, but they're staggering and falling. And I said, that stuff that they're drinking makes you act like that? And even at 10 years old, I could see that that wasn't logical, you know. So smoking, I didn't see any point in walking around blowing smoke. I say, that's smoke. I mean, what's logical about blowing smoke out of your mouth? They say, well, it makes you feel good when you inhale it. Well, what's wrong with air? I understand all of this coronavirus is about people gasping for air. Coal miners, hey, when they come out of that coal mine, boy, they take off all that gear and whatnot. That air is great. When astronauts go into outer space, they don't want nothing to happen to whatever is giving them air, because it ain't none out there, so I've heard. Hey, you start losing air, anybody who is underwater, if they lose an air, they're in big trouble. So what is better to breathe than air? So that takes care of that smoking deal. I don't care what they come up with, talking about some vaporize this, and you got some kind of mechanical device that you inhale. Somebody comes around with some crack cocaine or something, say you inhale it. And no, inhale air. That's a real high. I mean, that's as high as you can possibly get. Now, if you want some kind of artificial stuff that you snort that's going to mess up your mind and everything else behind that, the answer is no. It's not logical. So even at 10 years old, I could see the logic of people drinking stuff that's going to make them fall down and going to make them do things that they ordinarily would not do, get into fights that they would never be in, knife fights, fist fights. You get drunk and say, man, but you don't know how it makes you feel. Falling down and bumping your head like I saw a fellow do, fell down and face first into some broken glass. Blood went everywhere. And that was the punchline for me. He was a real nice guy, but he had that drinking habit.
Let me do this. Let me do this,
yes,
Mr. Fuller. Okay.
Yes, right.
You've been listening to the first hour of the Counter-Racist Code Show with Mr. Neely Fuller Jr. and me, your co-host, Mr. Bobby. So thank you for listening if you have to go in the first hour, but we have another hour, and we will do that beginning right now. Yes, okay. Welcome back to the second hour of the Counter Racist Code Show with Mr. Neely Fuller. We're on every Tuesday from 9 a.m. Eastern Time until 11 a.m. Eastern Time. We take your calls at 516-453-9921 or your Gmails at the numeral 7, Mr. Bobby, Bobby, at gmail.com, and Mr. Fuller will be happy to address your questions. If you do decide to call, make sure that when you call that number, hit the number 1 button after you dial the number, and you will immediately go to the top of the line, and you will be the next caller heard. All righty, so make sure you do that. The Counter Racist Code Show with Mr. Neely Fuller Jr. and me as your co-host, Mr. Bobby. 516-453-9921 is the number that you would like to, that you can call. Thank you for Brother Moon Pie. He's on the line. So thank you, Brother Moon Pie, making sure that everything goes good. Okay, Mr. Fuller, you were talking about, you answered about your good health. You don't drink or smoke, never have, and you gave examples of that. The first part of that, the question Mr. Black wanted to know, and then he had 3 other questions, was what does Mr. Fuller attribute his overall good health, mental sharpness, and well-being? What do you attribute that to, Mr. Fuller?
I have no idea about the rest of it. I just took care of the drinking and smoking part. But I for years, even as a teenager, I like sweets. I ate a lot of sweets, cookies, anything sweet. I mean, bring it on. And I paid the toll for that the early part of my days, because I didn't know any better. I like candy and cakes and cookies. To give me a bubbling pan of peach cobbler, I'll eat the whole pan.
Hey.
I mean, all country made, like some of the cooks back in those days.
Woo,
I mean, yeah, you bring some peach cobbler in front of me, and it's just bubbly and whatnot, and man, hey, just give me a great big spoon and fork and stand back out of the way, okay? Because I'm going to be here a while, okay? And but see, that takes its toll.
Yes.
Because it's not natural.
Yes.
It tastes good.
You ain't
and
wrong.
Just thinking about it now, I'd like to have some. All right.
Yes.
But but no, I had to back off of that, and I backed off of it almost, I think, in my own opinion, too late, because I don't have diabetes, but at the same time, it took its toll on whatever sugar, too much sugar. Everything has got sugar and salt in it.
Yes.
All right?
Okay.
That's death row. When you walk into the grocery store, that long line of good tasting stuff is loaded with poison.
Yes.
Because sugar and salt are poisons, all right, in most foods.
Yes.
And so, you just have to back off of that. I started doing it at about age 50 because I had to.
Yes,
and sir. In answer to the question, that's my health chart.
Okay.
But prior to that, I ate too many sweets. And it did. I think that it took its toll, but I just happened to make it this far.
Yes.
I guess by not smoking or drinking. I don't know. I really don't know.
Okay.
But I'm trying to make it a little bit further.
Okay.
Carry out the mission.
All righty. Now, this, I guess these next questions, they're all the same. Well, they're basically the same. Mr. Black wanted to know, first of all, and I'll read them first. It says, how many years did Neely Fuller serve in the military? What was his highest rank? Or what was the highest rank you achieved while you were in the military? Well, my screen just went dark. What was your occupational specialty and official job title when you when you retired, and what advice can you give to black people currently serving in the U.S. military? So let's go back to the first one. How many years did you serve in the military, Mr. Fuller?
2 years in the Army, 4 in the Air Force.
Okay.
And my specialty in the Army, as it is with most people, infantry, artillery, field artillery, or howitzers. And I was in combat for 10 months in North Korea, 1951-52, for a 10-month period, right on the front lines the whole time I was there. And so I was drafted into that. I joined the Air Force 4 years after I got out of the Army. Now, the highest rank I made in the Army was Staff Sergeant. I was probably, in my own opinion, the most incompetent Staff Sergeant in the history of the Army. Okay.
Okay.
One thing, I did not like the Army. That's number one. But they just moved me up to Staff Sergeant for incompetent reasons, I say, on their part. How I made Staff Sergeant, I do not know to this day, because I wasn't qualified to be a good private, as far as I'm concerned, because my heart was not in anything that I was doing. And most of it was just mundane things, like they put me on the telephones when I was in combat, because when you're around a whole lot of heavy guns going off, they needed somebody with a strong voice on the phones, because you had to relay messages. And that's what I did mostly in Korea, other than dodging. Got strafed by the Navy at one time. They came in, somebody sent them over the wrong target, broad daylight. They came in and shot up the ammo dump, And other than that, it was just occasional mortars coming in. That was my combat experience, because we were right behind the infantry. We were around a whole bunch of fighting, but when you're in artillery, you always fall back when the infantry falls back.
Yes.
I missed being in the infantry. I had infantry training, but I missed being in the infantry and right at what you might call bayonet range with opposing forces. I missed being that by one person in Camp Drake, Japan. They said, they called out the person in front of me, which was a person named Fryer. And then they called him out to some infantry outfit that they told us was going to be right in the pit of sheer death. All right, that's where he was going. And then they cut off that name. They said Fryer. And he stepped forward and went to that unit, that death unit, that certain death unit. That's what people were. That's what the rumor was.
Yes, sir.
And then they said, well, that's it for that. Now, the following named people will go to the 955th Field Artillery Battalion. Fuller, that was me.
Yes, sir.
So I guess I missed certain death by one person, just by my alphabetical name.
Yes, sir.
All right, Fuller instead of Fryer.
Okay.
That's just a little incident, right?
Okay, maybe you did answer, but I'm going to ask it again. What was your occupational specialty and official job title when you retired?
Oh, I was just in supply, which is where
supply.
They put a lot of black people in supply in the Air Force back in the 1950s. I mean, I was just around airplanes, but I was just mostly making up paperwork for parts that go into an airplane. So that's what I did, and that was fine with me, because I knew what being combat was like in the Army, and that's why I joined the Air Force, because I was thinking. People told me, well, they take black people in the Air Force, man. They put them in the lift and load category. They put them. They ain't seeing no fighting or nothing like that. They don't trust you up there, in the 1940s and 50s, They don't want you to do no rifle work. And I said, well, that's fine with me, because I don't want to do none.
Okay. And
Yeah.
the final question is, what advice can you give to black people currently serving in the U.S. military?
Well, just try to do the most constructive thing. I mean, it doesn't change. And try to produce justice as best you possibly can. Now, the military is very, 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 very structured. But you still say you took an oath that, when you went in, I did, that you would do what you could to spread justice around the world wherever you went. And you wouldn't cut no corners in doing that. And so as best you can, just remind people every day that you're in the military. I mean, all the senior officers and whatnot. Just hold up your hand and ask for permission to speak like you have to do. And then say, am I supposed to be helping to produce justice, sir? Sir, am I supposed to be helping to produce justice in this uniform? Yes or no? I know I have a pledge to my unit. I have a pledge to the flag. I have a pledge to this, that, and the other. But is my ultimate goal as a person in this battle uniform that I'm in supposed to produce ultimately what? What am I supposed to produce? Do I just go around just tearing up stuff just because it's there? Blowing up stuff just because it's there? Or do I have a higher mission that has me doing all these other things that this is supposed to lead to? And here in this unit, am I supposed to see to it that no injustice is done in this unit? Now, when I was in the Army, they said it's the right way to do things and the wrong way to do things. And then there's another way, and that's the Army way. It ain't right. Mm-hmm. It ain't wrong. It's Army. But at the same time, you can still raise the question, yeah, but what does that have to do with justice? Is justice anywhere in this equation? Now, if they say no, well, now we got a problem. We got a problem right here in this unit. The code of conduct and everything else. You got military courts and all like that. Are you telling me that doesn't mean nothing? Because those, the adjutant general and whatnot, he took an oath, all right? And he's supposed to be a judge and all like that. See, and what is this oath for? What are we doing? Why we are doing what we're doing? And what ultimate goal do we have? Otherwise, we got a lot of people who might die here. Now, when you're given permission to speak, those are the things, the questions that you raise, and you raise them all the time. Yeah, we got all this technical stuff, and we know how to do this. We got tactics all worked out. I mean, we're precision about this. We lose a lot of sleep, because in the military, that's the first thing I learned, is that there's no such thing as sleep. I don't know whether that's changed or not, but sleep is like something that if you're in the military, what's that? You ain't ever supposed to be asleep. There's no such thing as sleep in the military. I mean, so, but a lot of scientists say if you don't get enough sleep, you're not going to be very efficient. I don't care what you're in. But I don't think that's going to go over. You raising that issue in the military, that's not going to go over at all.
Not at all. That's
going to go over like a lead balloon.
Okay. Let's see here before we move on. This was concerning your statements concerning how you love sweets, particularly when you were younger. Someone wrote in, I wonder if he has ever eaten a moon pie. Have you?
No, not to my knowledge.
Yeah.
I think I've heard of them.
Yeah.
I don't think I've ever eaten one.
Yeah. Well,
Right.
we have a moon pie on this end. He's being silent right now, but he's the guy that helps run and make everything so good with us. But anyway, since I wonder if he's ever eaten a moon pie, I have eaten quite a few. As a matter of fact, when we were coming up. Ain't nothing like it, especially those banana ones. But anyway, let me get back to here. Okay, this comes from Petrus. It says, Mr. Fuller, did you get the message from The Handmaid's Tale, a series that used the next virus that comes along to incrementally collapse the so-called laws such as constitutions in order to get to a state of overt and open white supremacy control, but make sure that white women don't get mistreated too much. Otherwise, they'll help the children of off-colored or non-white escape. It says, did you see the message in the series, and did you see that this is what is happening now with the COVID-19? Did you see that, Mr. Fuller, The Handmaid's Tale?
No, I didn't.
Okay, yeah, neither did I. I didn't see this, but I guess it's a TV series and maybe movie that has at least 36 episodes to it, and maybe there's some lessons in there. But no, I didn't see that, and obviously you just stated that you didn't either. So okay, Handmaid's Tale. I guess there's a lot of stuff that's going on right now. Okay. Let's see here. On this virus, when we first commenced the conversation this morning, you had mentioned about the information, particularly concerning you, since a question was asked, what are you doing that? And you mentioned a very good point about information. You said that there are, not exactly in this way, but there's some good information and there's some information that's not good. In other words, what I interpret is that there is some information that is true and that there's information that is not true, which led me to think that there's a lot of confusion out there concerning this COVID virus. What do you think about that, Mr. Fuller? Is there a lot of confusion out there? Or are you clear on what's going on, or what say you on this?
There's confusion in every area of activity. And this is just another area of activity where there's mass confusion. So I'm just taking the safest position that I can possibly take, that, as an individual in my position, and that is I'm following the safest, what I'm told is the safest thing to do. Stay away from people, unless you absolutely have to be in their presence, because you might be picking up the disease or spreading it. They say that's the code for doing that. Keep your distance. Go out only if it's not, only when it's necessary, if you have your options to do so, and just do the best way you can to combat the virus. So they give a codified list of instructions for doing that. Wash your hands every chance you get. Don't touch your face if you can remember to do so. Wear a mask, which when I go out, I do. But go out among people and stay, when you're among people, try to keep your distance from them as best you can under the circumstances that you're given, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So whatever those instructions are, I try to follow them, even though they may be the incorrect instructions. I don't know. But always try to do the best you possibly can. That's what the code says. In every circumstance that is presented to you in the world that you're in.
Okay. In all of your years of dealing with and being the victim of white supremacy, could you say or could you see something like this, the corona, for example, developing or something else that would be similar to that in all of your years of talking about this and dealing with this, and then writing your books? Could you see something like this developing?
Oh, sure. I think there's a possibility of almost anything happening. I think right now there's a possibility of every volcano that's been inactive for thousands of years suddenly erupted in one day. The same thing. I mean, all of them just suddenly start throwing stuff up in the air. Every volcano that's on the planet. But I think that's possible. That could happen. And what the code says, every circumstance that comes up, be prepared, particularly for any kind of tragedy, anything happening that shouldn't happen. That's a rock solid part of the code. Always expect things to happen that shouldn't happen.
Okay.
Every black person should think that way. Always expect things to happen that shouldn't happen. Expect that. Prepare for the very worst. All right, but work for the best. That's an old cliche. That's not one that I invented. That's not a saying, but you can make that a part of the code. But prepare every day for something happening that shouldn't happen. You should be in that frame of mind all of the time. And don't be surprised at anything that happens that shouldn't happen or that hasn't happened before.
Yes. Okay, Black Speak wrote this, says, Mr. Bobby, could you please ask Mr. Fuller if he has heard of master class? Then he goes on to say, a master class is a lesson where someone who is an expert at something, such as dancing or music, gives advice to a group of good students. What does the code say about master class?
Well, I don't know. Master class is whatever the definition that you give it is. So it always goes to definitions. This is why I wrote a word guide for the code part of a code that I wrote, all right, where you just explain what every word means. So when someone uses the term master class, first thing you want is a definition. A master class of what? In order to accomplish what? These are the questions. What is it you're trying to do with this master class? What's supposed to be the ultimate goal? If you set up a class or anything that anybody sets up, first thing you want to know is, what is it? What's the name of it? What's the definition of this name? And what is the goal? You always want to point to what the goal is. And if you're being taught something, you want to know what the goal is. Like someone asked me, just early on in this same program about the military.
Yes.
It comes down to, if someone allows you to speak, what is the goal? They say the generals want to know, what's our mission? Okay? We've been fixing to send somebody. We've got a lot of equipment, and we got a lot of people here, and you're sending us somewhere. Well, what is the goal? What's the reason that you're sending us? And when will we know we have achieved what we set out to do? You should know where you're going before you take one step, so that you'll know when you arrive. Otherwise, you're just wandering. And nobody on the planet is put here just to wander when there are problems to be solved, because it's just about everybody comes into the world. I don't know of anybody that doesn't come in the world without problems to be solved right from the time that you were born. So you want to identify what those problems are that you are supposed to be solving, and then start the procedure in whatever is a master class to solve that problem. But first, identify what it is you're doing, whatever you're doing for. What are you doing it for? Black people are taught, just do it. See, we're taught that. Just do what
Yeah.
you're told. Don't wonder why you're doing it. And boy, have they done an excellent job on black people in that department. Because black people are almost dedicated to doing things for no constructive reason, or even to think about what the reason is that we're doing it. Just do it.
Okay.
Because that's the way you raise slaves. Just do stuff, but don't give a reason why you're doing it.
Okay. Let's see. Black_Justice_Reigns asked this question here. It says, I've heard you have been keeping an internal list of Mr. Fuller's list of films. Well, no, I haven't. I don't. If I intimated that, no, I'm not keeping Mr. Fuller's list of his films. So let me get that out the way first. But it says, since it has not been posted on the website, can you please provide it for me? Well, I can't do that because I don't know what it is. I did write some stuff down a while ago when Mr. Fuller and I were on another platform, and there were, I think, at least 40-something books. As a matter of fact, Mr. Fuller did go over some of those books on there. Moreover, can you ask Mr. Fuller if he has read Thus Spoke the let me get this correct phonetically, Zarathustra. I'm unable to call due to different time zone. I got to find out what Zarathustra is. Excuse me, pronouncing that word. I thought I had it good, but anyway, Mr. Fuller, a lot of people are wanting to know about your list of books or other movies that you have. For some reason, that I'm not going to say I get that question every week, but there are a lot of people that are interested in those books. I mean, in those movies, and I know that you've mentioned, like we did today, Shawshank Redemption. We bring that up, or you bring that up a lot. Casablanca, you bring that up, and there are others that bring up whatever it is that is brought up. You always speak about the lessons to be learned from each movie. Do you have that list completed, or will you put it up on the website on Produce Justice so people can actually go to it and see what some of those movies are?
I've been promising to do that for about 5 years, and I stopped making that promise because the people who are supposed to get it up, I mean, there's been some breakdown in communication and whatnot. I have the list. It's about 40 movies, so I think I tried to read most of them over the air, but then that takes up too much time, okay? It's just about 40, 45, something like that. And the list, I don't keep adding to the list because I'm very selective in the ones that I think people ought to see, in my opinion. But in lieu of that, until I can get that done, I just say, you can look at any movie, particularly the old ones, and just try to get a lesson out of any movie that you see, old ones, new ones, and whatnot, anything in between. And that's what I do. That's how I got my list. I found a lot of lessons in Shawshank Redemption, and I found a lot of lessons in Casablanca, found a lot of lessons in From Here to Eternity. Some movies have more lessons than others. Some movies that are on my list have just 3 or 4 lessons. Others have maybe a dozen. I don't think many of them have over a dozen or 2 or a dozen and a half. But almost in every scene, some lessons. So you can just look for the lessons in movies. And a lot of lessons that include black people, unfortunately, in my opinion, have no constructive lessons at all. They do nothing but glorify what I call ghetto glorification, glorifying the things that black people do in the ghetto at their very worst. And they ought to stop making movies that don't have lessons, where you can learn something. Black people need to learn something constructive for a change.
Yes.
Rather than just glorifying garbage like we're already into. We don't need to glorify garbage.
Let me do this. You're listening to the Counter Racist Code Show with Mr. Neely Fuller Jr. and me, Mr. Bobby, your co-host. If you'd like to get in contact with the show, you may do so by calling 516-453-9921 and make sure that you press the number 1 button after you dial that number, and you will go to the front of the line. Otherwise, you can Gmail me at the numero 7, Mr. Bobby, BOBBY, @gmail.com, and I will effort to read your Gmails to him. Again, you're listening to the Counter Racist Code Show, CRCS, with Mr. Neely Fuller Jr., and I am your co-host, Mr. Bobby. All righty. Okay, let's see here. I'm trying to get these Gmails up. A lot of people ask about you and Dr. Welsing. I wasn't aware that you and her, or I was told that you and her used to do programs together or speeches together. What was that like to do that with Dr. Welsing, Mr. Fuller?
Usually Dr. Welsing makes her own speeches, and I make mine. The few times we have been together where we actually were on the same podium, she would give her views, I would give mine, and there would be other people there too on the same podium. But we didn't act as a team, which is the way that the United Independent Compensatory Code System concept is supposed to operate. A lot of people thought that we were a duo, a team. And some people, and I won't name any names, do operate that way. I'm not saying it shouldn't be that way, but the United Independent way is that Dr. Welsing makes her presentation and I make mine. And there's no connection between the two. Okay, even though Dr. Welsing said she got a lot of ideas, most of her ideas from me, within a certain range. But Dr. Welsing, I am not familiar. I've never even read Dr. Welsing's book, the ISIS Papers. People have this illusion that myself and Dr. Welsing were always on the same stage in the same places at the same time. Usually, if we travel, I have traveled with Dr. Welsing, but she would speak one night and I would speak the next night. But I didn't interfere with her material and she didn't interfere with mine. That's the United Independent way, and something that I advocate that everybody does. I mean, everybody should have their own opinion. Don't turn loose to your own way of looking at the world until you make the decision to look at it that way. That's why everything that's in my textbook is a suggestion. And you can take some suggestions and use them, and the ones that you don't want to use, ignore them. It's not a set piece. You are an individual. Don't give up your individuality for anybody. Don't try to be like anybody else. Don't ever do that. That's why you are you. There's nobody in the universe exactly like you. Whatever created the universe made it that way. It's supposed to stay that way. Never try to be someone else. Be yourself once you can find out who you are and what you are supposed to be doing, because you have an assignment, whomever you are, that's unique, that nobody else has. Otherwise, why would you be you?
Okay.
I mean, why be everybody else? You're not everybody else. You're you. You have a certain amount of time to be here. So it's the same thing. That's that United Independent factor in the title of the book that you can get to by going to producejustice.com. The United Independent Compensatory Code System Concept. What you do is ally yourself not with any person. Like Dr. Wilson did not ally herself with me. She's Dr. Wilson. And I did not ally myself with her. And I do not advocate anybody allying themselves with any other person. The code concept is that you ally with what? The logic that came with the universe. That's your ally. You don't latch on to any other person. I don't care what person it is. So we got to get out of this thing of I got to have I got to attach myself to a person. You don't attach yourself to anybody. You're a person. You're a whole person. You attach yourself to a concept or an idea, a way of doing things, because everything is about doing things and not doing things, saying things and not saying things. Dr. Wilson had our way of saying things and not saying things, and I had my way of saying things and not saying things, and still do. But, people have, black people have been taught to have what you call a herd mentality, that somehow we are not, something not whole about us unless we are in, that homeboy thing. I got to be with my homies. Otherwise, I don't, I'm completely lost. I look around and I don't see my homies, I fall dead. That's how the white supremacists say. That's how you control black people. They always got to be attached to some other person. All right?
Okay.
Or they fall apart. But a white man who is a white supremacist can walk into any situation alone, but except for one thing that he has for company. He has a code, a white code, that he follows to the letter. And that's why we are the most successful people at white supremacy that the world has ever seen. We're the most successful operation. Black people always got to attach themselves to something, another person, rather than an idea, a code that they don't break.
All righty. Let's see here. Jocelyn wrote this, Mr. Fuller. It says, Mr. Bobby, can you tell the listeners if they go to Google.com and type in Neely Fuller movie list, a link to that movie list will come up on ProduceJustice.com. And then they sent me the link. So evidently it has it up there. The list of movies. Somebody did that for you. Your movies are on there. Again, Mr. Bobby, can you tell the listeners if they go to Google.com and type in Neely Fuller movie list that a link to the movie list will come up on ProduceJustice.com. Now, I didn't know that was on ProduceJustice.com. That's pretty good.
Well, so I recited a whole lot of the list on the air on a program called TalkTameAtRadio.com.
Yes,
at one time, I think I did that. And so somebody might have recorded it at that time, but it may not be in the sequence that I wanted it in. That list, the way to write, but those words probably might be there. I don't know. But eventually I'm going to get around to, I hope
yes,
that I can coordinate to get that list up on my website, which is ProduceJustice.com.
And they did say ProduceJustice.com on here, but okay. All right, and they gave a link on that too, which is ProduceJustice.com /
Okay, well, I will finally get that list up one of these days, I hope, but I'm not going to promise anybody anything because I made these. The code says, don't make promises that you don't keep.
Okay. Got that down there. Okay, let's go to the phone lines. Let me see here. Joshua. So I got it down in here. Yeah, okay. Yeah, you're on. I had to make sure I got you on here. Okay, go ahead, Josh.
Oh, yes, sir. I asked a question about can people change earlier and animals and so on and
Oh
so
yeah.
forth.
Okay.
I have another question for Mr. Fuller. I was just talking to someone, and they were telling me how their father owns land in some parts of the country, and I was listening to the show when they called Mr. Fuller, and I thought to myself, I want to ask Mr. Fuller that, as I think about land being passed down, if I own my own land and I was given it by my father and he was given that land by his father and so on and so forth, am I not free then? Because I have my own land and I can build on it and I can grow on it and I can reproduce on it. Aren't I free, Mr. Fuller, or less of a prisoner if I own my own land in Alabama or Mississippi or wherever I may own it? Am I not free and not a prisoner, not subject to much of the system because I own land, yes?
No, you own. Black people don't own anything, okay? But you have use of things because the prison masters allow you to have use of things. So you acquire what you can, in a prison system. You're a prisoner of war. So if they allow you to have a garden and say that that's your garden plot and the garden is producing for you, just look at what you are able to produce. And if you're able to produce it, then do it. But you may be located in a place where you have a title to the land. I've had titles to the land that was not serving me at all. It was a liability. So I got rid of it, sold it, okay? Because you just look at what you got and what it is actually producing. Now, land is important, like any commodity. A car is important if it's producing for you. But if you're just riding around trying to show off, like code says, black people shouldn't be into anything that got to do with showing off. That should be out. That should be like being crazy. Black people should get out of the show-off business altogether, unless you are in what they call show business, where you get up on a stage and perform. That's a business. That brings in revenue. But just, black people, prisoners of war, strutting around in the prison yard, showing off to other prisoners, we have been doing that as a goal in life. And we don't do any of that. But getting back to the land part, yes, you don't hold on to land just because it's traditional to do so. You say, what can I do with it? What is it producing for me? And the code says, like in the first code book, the 1984 edition, said buy land and only sell land in order to buy other land. But why would you sell land that's producing in order to buy other land unless that's going to produce? See, land is just like any other commodity. There's nothing magical about land. Like there's nothing magical about owning anything, except what does it produce for you? Anything that you so-called have access to, whether you quote unquote own it or not, that produces something of constructive value for you, you own it at that time. Because that's true of ownership of any kind for anybody anyway. What does it produce? If something is not giving you compensation, then the question is raised, what do you have it for? If you're wearing a pair of sneakers, you say, okay, well, what are you getting out of, what did you pay for those sneakers? I paid $1,000 for them. Okay, well, are you getting $1,000 worth of wear? out of those sneakers. I'm not talking about somebody looking at it and say, man, that's a nice pair of shoes, unless they're going to give you something. Now, if the person is going to say, you got on a good pair of shoes there, boy, you got on a top quality. Yeah, that's got that fancy name. That's the latest thing out. Now, hold still for a minute and let me go in my pocket. I'm going to give you $500 for them shoes that you are wearing because you are wearing them. In other words, show business. The person is going to give you $500, not for them to buy the shoes. They're going to give you $500 because you're wearing the shoes. Now, that's the way that black people should think. Or somebody complimenting you on having something in a system of white supremacy shouldn't mean anything to a black person, period, ever. Somebody complimenting a black person, white person or black person, complimenting on what you have that's not producing anything, but it's taking money from you and not producing anything of constructive value, that's like a prisoner in a cell block, a war prisoner, showing off their diamond rings in that prison cell. We're prisoners of war. It's the same thing that applies to land. What is it producing for you? Rather than you just walking around saying, I got some land. Do you have the land, or does the land have you? That's a question only you can ask.
Okay.
And answer.
All right. Joshua, thank you for calling. Do
Thank
not be a stranger, my brother. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All righty. Let's see here, Mr. Fuller. Let's go to Lola. Let me see, Lola, if I can cue you in. Okay, Lola. You're on with Mr. Fuller. Go ahead, please.
Good morning, Mr. Bobby. Good morning, Mr. Fuller. It's always honoring Mr. Fuller. I've just been, just sitting back and observing at this point. There's just been a lot going on, in the system of white supremacy. There's no common ground when it comes to helping prisoners. You constantly, give people your suggestions, Mr. Fuller, but people don't want to hear it. And that's just the honest truth. Prisoners don't want to be helped, and it's almost draining, and it's just becoming overwhelming because you try to problem solve, you try to help people, that's in need, but it's a difficult task. And, I'm going to continue to try to dismantle the system and evolve and eventually, write my code. It's possible if I have the strength, to be honest. But just the point, of just helping people is difficult. And Mr. Fuller, everything you said last week was, so true. Like the sex on war, that is very real. And it's almost scary sometimes, because they have truly sabotaged us when it comes to this. And it's overbearing. And like you said, once we get that intact, I think everything else, is like a mop-up operation almost, when it comes to just producing justice and getting on, code. And but I'm just feeling very overwhelmed, and but it's just hard for me to understand, Mr. Fuller, how we can help prisoners who don't want to be helped. How is it possible to those who hurt you or help those who turn against you? You know what I mean? The same people who you are trying to help. That's a difficult task, to do. I believe I'm going to grow old and it won't be changed, just in my opinion. You try to have hope, but hope, it's very far-fetched. But that's my question, Mr. Fuller. How are we supposed to help these prisoners who turn their backs, they don't want it, they don't want help? To be honest, it seems like they don't, but they want suggestions, they want help, and you constantly tell them, you constantly give them suggestions. I don't know if people take my suggestions as being very critical or what, but I'm who I am, and there are many people who have told me, sometimes you can't just always be yourself or put yourself out there. But if someone is asking for something, it's my response to, help them, to intentionally, that's my intention to help. I think everyone has the right to be who they are.
So what is your question for Mr. Fuller, Lola?
My question is, how are we supposed to help prisoners who don't want to be helped?
Okay.
That's your question.
Okay.
How do you help a person that does not want to be helped? The Code of Five responses on page 171. I keep going back to that. Somehow, I don't know. I don't think that you might be one. I don't think that you're one of the people, but a lot of people ask that. And I go to page 171 of the code book. That's what the code book is for, to answer these questions. You ask a person what? What do you want to do? But in the code book it says, what do I want to do? Because you always start with yourself. So you want to be of help, okay? So how do you go about doing it? By asking other people, what do they want? So everybody wants something. Everybody wants something. People who, I haven't run into anybody who say they don't want something, okay? I think that's kind of rare, and I don't even think people are telling the truth when they say they don't want anything. They have no wants at all. I'm talking about WANTS, okay? Mm-hmm. So you go to page 171, and paraphrasing now, it's 4 questions, just 4. Because you ask, how do you do it? When you talk to people, any people, I don't care what people they are, anybody on the planet, it's just 4 questions. 4, just 4, not 1,500, just 4 questions. What do you want to do? Question 1. Question 2, why do you want to do it? Question 3, how do you plan to do it? And question 4, what do you expect the constructive result to be? And wait for the answer. Don't start telling people. See, the code says you don't tell anybody what they should be doing. You ask them, what do they want to do? Don't start dipping into what they should be doing unless they ask for a suggestion. Because codification is about just making suggestions. It's not dictatorship. You're not trying to lead anybody anywhere. You're trying to get people to lead themselves. That's what you're trying to do. Get people, the United Independent whole concept is to get people to lead themselves. And the best way to get people to lead themselves is for them to decide what they are supposed to be doing, how they're supposed to be doing it, and for what reason. And then leave it alone. Don't make judgments after that. Just ask those 4 questions. People call me, and on here on this program, they raise this question. You're not the only person that raises this question all the time. How do you get black people? How do we come together? Yeah, just go to those 4 wants. That'll do it every time, and stay in that lane. Don't move outside the question lane. Take people for where they are, not where you want them to be. Let them lead themselves where they need to be. And the best way to do that is by asking questions about what they want to do and what do they think the results are going to be of them doing what they say they want to do. That causes people to do what? Think.
Think.
So
exactly.
The best thing you can do with anybody is to get a person to think at another level on their own. Don't try to be anybody's leader. I'm nobody's leader. I don't want anybody to ever say I'm their leader or their mentor.
Absolutely.
Well, I follow Neely Fuller's, but no, follow logic. Logic came with the universe. Logic is what accomplishes things.
All
Neely
right.
Fuller doesn't have any great accomplishment.
All right, Lola. Thank you for your call, Lola. And again, don't be a stranger, okay?
Well, thank you.
You're welcome. All right, Mr. Fuller, we've come down to this part here. We're 10 minutes late, but that's okay. Good answer, by the way, that you. Well, matter of fact, all your answers were good, as far as I'm concerned, as I am still learning too. But it is at this point, Mr. Fuller, we got about 4 minutes that we need to have you speak about your book, and then I'm going to do one more thing. Go ahead, speak about your book.
Yes, just like I said about page 171 and 172 of the basic textbook about wants. That's what the book is about. It's about people are calling in and they're saying, what do you do? What do you do? What do you do? I can't. That's what I wrote the book for. It tells you what to do. Make suggestions, not dictatorship, just suggestions. And you take the suggestions and see if they work. But if you don't take the suggestions to see if they work, then nothing changes. I used to read just to be reading, because I didn't have nothing else to do. Country town. So, saw that movie for the second time. At the theater. So I don't want to go to the movie. Nothing going on the radio. So I'll do some reading. But I just read just to be reading until I stopped reading just to be reading. I started saying, now, what am I getting out of what I'm reading that I can put to use? That will produce a constructive result for me or someone else. Now, that's what this textbook for victims of racism is supposed to do. And if it doesn't do that, it's not doing its job. Okay? So I recommend that you go to producejustice.com and get the textbook and read it and try some of the things that are in the book that will help you to solve what you think is a problem. I think it's something somewhere in there that will, whatever problem you have, it'll help you get some thoughts about how to go about solving it. Because that's what people are always saying that they have, problems.
Problems, yes, sir.
Just about anybody that you talk to say that they have a lot of problems, particularly among black people. Black people say all the time, they don't have any problem telling you that they got problems. So the whole idea of the textbook for victims of racism is to solve whatever problem you got, regardless of what it is, in any area of activity. Okay? So, you can ask me questions about, the details of it, and that's what this program is for. But go to producejustice.com to get I call suggestions about solving problems.
Okay.
Whatever problem you have.
All right, producejustice.com. Okay, got to get this one in. This is from Theodore Lush. Have you read or heard anything about this book, or what? I guess it's a book. It's called White Privilege to Terrorize by John Pavlovitz. Have you ever heard of that?
I never heard of it.
Yeah, I hadn't either, but I guess I.
What's the title of it?
White Privilege to Terrorize.
White Privilege to Terrorize.
By
There's
John.
a lot of books being written, and that's an excellent thing, but I haven't heard of that one.
Okay.
And probably won't get a chance to read it anyway.
Yeah, John Pavlovitz.
But to the audience, for those who are listening, you might be interested, because that's what this program is for. Anywhere, not just Neely Fuller's book.
All righty.
Read anything that anybody wrote that you think will help you to do what? Solve problems.
And got to leave it right there. Thank you, Mr. Fuller. Thank you for all of the callers. You've been listening to the Counter Racist Code Show with Mr. Neely Fuller, Jr. Thank you again so much for all your calls, all your Gmails, and we'll try to do better even next week. Thanks for listening to the Counter Racist Code Show with Mr. Neely Fuller, Jr. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Fuller.
I definitely need to do better. Thank you.
You're welcome.